Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for coming. My name is John Nine. I'm one of the senior programmers here at the festival, and I put together the panel series along with my colleague Kim Yutani. I want to encourage you to take a look at all the programming we have for the rest of the week. There's some cool stuff coming up. Cinema Cafe tomorrow with Lauren Greenfield and Stephen James. But we're here today for a couple different reasons, actually, a lot of things coming together. The festival has played episodic work for actually several years now, beginning with Top of the Lake a few years ago. And in different ways over the years, that's evolved to the point where this year we have our inaugural indie episodic program, a section that I think has found an identity to showcase independent artists who are working to create different forms of content, episodic content outside of traditional systems and independently. At the same time, the Institute has also been working for several years to incorporate episodic content into our lab process in the feature film program. So, and in both of those ways, we're sort of responding to the changing landscape of storytelling and the idea that the people who have traditionally worked at Sundance, people who we would have considered filmmakers 10 years ago, are really now storytellers, and they themselves are wanting to experiment with different forms. I think the aspect that we're introducing this year is also to look at sort of the industry landscape for that. We've often had the storytellers, and we do again this year too, but we wanted also to focus on the industry. So we're going to sort of dispense with the long bios because you have them in front of you, and you're going to hear more from our guests. But I want to thank them all for coming, and they're going to talk a little bit about the work that they have here. And I want to thank my good colleague Michelle Satter, who's the founding director of the feature film program. I also want to acknowledge some of my other colleagues, Mark Pedri and Kristen Airy and Jen Goyne-Blake, who really helped us put this together. And I hope you enjoy the conversation. Thanks again for coming. Thank you all for coming.
It's a big crowd. Thank you for coming. And we're live streaming out there, which is exciting. I have a couple questions for the audience, because I'm just trying to gauge where you are. And who's been at the Ray these last couple of days? Great. The Ray is where we're showing indie episodic Monday through Wednesday. Today, I believe, is Wednesday.
I think it is too.
Who just got here to the festival? Okay, great. All right, so you're the ones that have to come up with the really great questions for us. And who are the creators? The filmmakers, producers, writers in this audience? Okay, fantastic. All right, well, we're going to jump in. John laid out a kind of framework for this. As you see, the title is The Future of Indie TV. I think we're all the future of indie TV, both here and in the audience. I don't know that we can answer that, but what we're going to do is talk about where some of the opportunities lie, where some of the challenges lie. We're going to talk about it from a creative point of view and also from the business as well. And what we'll do is we're going to get into a conversation here with some prepared questions, but we really want to open it up in about an hour. It'll go fast. An hour will go fast to the audience and get your questions. So we will get started. Here's what I want. You've got, as John Nine says, you have the bios on the panelists. A lot of them you may know from their incredible work, and they are all working across multiple forms and multiple platforms. We're loving the new fluidity. I don't know if it's new, but the fluidity that exists in terms of storytelling, which is quite exciting right now. But I wanted to, because I always, I personally love origin stories, so I'm not asking for the origin story, but wanted each of them, by way of introduction, to talk about several of their projects that represent their creative vision. And it could be 20 years ago, but something that they're excited about, that reflects the kind of work that they do. So get a little bit into their kind of creative mindset. So Bernie, you're on.
Oh, all right.
And say your name, because I don't know if there are no name tags.
No, so I'm Bernie Sue. My bio is on the forums, apparently. So I guess to kind of frame it with a project. So I moved to LA to be a screenwriter for television. That was my goal. I still don't hold a single TV credit. I have 2 Emmys, which is kind of weird. That's kind of it's very exemplary of like the space that I've kind of put myself in. So the spirit of the work, like Lizzie Bennet Diaries, my most known property, of course. The spirit of that wasn't let's adapt Jane Austen for YouTube and then sell it. We weren't about. That wasn't the philosophy. Now, I'm not saying we've never done that. I've certainly have developed Sell. And so forth. But that was a property where we looked at the spirit of independent and said, we're just going to do it. And part of it was we weren't sure people would get it without seeing it. It's like, how do you pitch that adaptation as a vlog on YouTube back in 2012? How do you do that without showing it? So we decided to do it. And that's the philosophy that I embrace the most. It's kind of that's the spirit of not having to deal with too many cooks in the kitchen, whether it be development or the business people or other minds that are in there. You kind of have this vision and you go for it. And you build yourself a team, of course, and we went. And so that was a series we self-produced at the start. It came out and was super hot, and it carried itself. So we control the entire property still.
We're going to ask you a lot more about that.
And so I won't get into it. Yeah. But yeah, that's the most definitive way I look at things. That's the way I look at the work. You love it, you believe in it, you go for it.
Stephanie?
Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Stephanie Allain. I saw a TV show in 1968 called Julia. It was Diane Carol. It was about a single working mom. And it blew me away because it was my mom that I saw on television. And the power of that, I guess, just sort of stuck with me because that's what I do, basically. So you asked for a few movies. Boys in the Hood, I have to say, is my first because John Singleton really taught me how to protect the vision of a writer-director, and the power of that movie, putting a human face on black crime, actually reduced black-on-black crime. So the power of that was undeniable. It was my first movie, and it was Oscar nominations and everything. I thought, oh, this is easy. Many, many years later, I sold my house to make a movie called Hustle and Flow, and I came here to sell it. And again, it was the power of those images of a pimp and a hoe that I thought was so important because we'd sort of glorified that in the black community and on cinema. And the power of creativity to elevate the lowest of the low was, again, something that I felt passionate enough to sell my house, which was so stupid. Don't ever do that. I want to call out all the female directors I've worked with in those movies because the images of black women that are so nuanced and complex, and Homegrown exists basically to create enough content to sort of put a dent in stereotypes that Hollywood has made their business since Birth of a Nation. So. Especially Mel Jones, who has, that's why I'm here today. Leimert Park, she was my mentee, my assistant, my associate producer, my producing partner, and now she created and directed her own show. It's, again, black women celebrating their bodies, their sexuality, their loves, and their friendship. And the final thing is the only movie that we own. It's called French Dirty. It's on Netflix. My 2 sons directed it. We've been around the world, and to your point, working in Hollywood for fees forever, that's what I do, owning a piece of material that we did not ask for permission to make. We went out, we made it, it turned out great, we traveled the world with it, we own it, Netflix has it, and we're gonna license it, for forever. It's probably gonna end up being the most lucrative thing I've done.
Hi, I'm Steven Soderbergh. 29 years ago, I made a film that world premiered here. Now I'm back. In between, I've always been fascinated not only by form, storytelling form, but how those stories get seen. What I've witnessed since Sex Lies in terms of opportunities for filmmakers has been incredible and really exciting. And I've tried to take part in every new format that comes along to explore the potential and see if, you know, what's happening is a secular change in how we look at things, or whether it's a cyclical change in how we look at things. I would have come to this panel because what everybody's doing here is something that I want to learn more about. We were just backstage talking about, well, how are we defining TV? I don't even know what that is anymore. And how do you define indie also? Because I've never been somebody that defined it strictly by who wrote the check. Anyway, that's enough from me.
Stephen, before you, I just wanted to say, I mean, in the history of the Sundance Film Festival, the film Sex, Lies, and Videotapes is, as told, put our festival on the map. So beyond being a quite extraordinary film at the time, thank you.
Oh, thank you.
My name is David Wain. I am in no way, shape, or form Steven Soderbergh. I mean, in some ways. Yeah. When we were talking about, you know, what things we've done that are your vision or personal to you, I realized that I've been involved in the creation of 3 different TV series that each of them had its impetus from something smaller that we had done much more on our own. And to me, I think that's the organic nature of doing something that you just want to do, that nobody gives you the check to do, and that you're not trying to sell, I think is, for me, what has made creativity happen. And so I think about when I was in college in the early 90s and getting together with a comedy troupe, and then we would just make our own little shorts, and then we eventually showed those pieces to MTV, which led to a series, The State, and then later I was with a comedy trio, Stella. We did the same thing. We made shorts just for ourselves to show an audience of 100 people at a nightclub, and those were the experimental ground to set the groundwork for making an actual series on a network. And then later, a very similar situation with Children's Hospital. So that's what I would say.
Great. All right. Thank you. So I want to ask all of them, and we're kind of answering it, we'll be answering it for the next hours. What does indie episodic mean to you? And this is as a creator and a producer. And again, I'm always interested in what are the opportunities that it is giving you, and what have been the challenges for you? So who wants to jump in on that one? Yeah, Stephanie? Yeah.
I mean, to me, indie episodic, it's an art form, and it's a proof of concept. It's both. It can be both. Indie episodic also means really, really creative people working with not that much money. So.
Totally agree with that one. 100%. I mean, going off the conversation we had in the green room about what indie means, and my conversations with other members of your team, it's this weird thing because, like, before it used to be, oh, you're not part of the big 6 studios, and you make a deal and you make your film or you make what it is, and that's indie. But then it's like there are a lot of big companies that are writing checks now that aren't big studios. And would you think Google, which owns YouTube, which is a much larger company than any of the big 6 studios, which has an indie series part of Sundance right now. So it's a hard definition, but I think of it right now as we, and I'm saying I'm telling you the answer. I think we interpret it as something that's outside of the traditional system.
Right. Giving you some freedom, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Ideally. Okay.
David, you want to?
I mean, I agree. I think we're in a time right now where it seems like the landscape is changing so much, and new players are coming and going so fast that there are a lot of opportunities to find that small source of funding for something where a company is just saying, we want to try something, here, take this, see what happens. And that hasn't always been the case, so I think there's a lot of opportunity.
Stephen, you want to?
Well, I just like that the format has, the episodic format has been completely obliterated. You can look at your project and say they should be 5-minute pieces, they should be 20-minute pieces, or they're an hour. We'll drop them all at once. We'll drop them a week at a time.
4 episodes, or it's 100 episodes.
Yeah, they'll come out this time of year. Then we'll take 2 years off. Then we'll, I just love that now. When I was growing up, it was so rigid, and now it's what you want it to be and what's best for the piece. And I think that's incredibly freeing. Obviously, the other thing we were talking about is, the democratization of means has created a situation where anybody can make anything. Now the challenge is, can you get anybody to look at it? And even if you do get somebody to look at, and Bernie can talk to this, what is the metric that you're using for success? And then how do you monetize this? It can't just, be a hobby. Like, you want to turn this into your job. You want the people that are working on these things to turn these into jobs. The unions have done a very, very, I think, smart job of coming up with contracts for these ultra low budget series that are incredibly flexible, and that helps a lot. But it's evolving so quickly that I have questions about, you've had a success, and what did that look like on a practical economic level?
Yeah. Well, that's the next question. So,
okay.
Bernie's done, for Sundance and some of the writers who've been part of our New Voices Lab, and we asked them to come in and do a sort of a case study, which would be fabulous to do. We can't do that today, but you more than almost anybody else we know have some of the secret sauce of how, so talk about Lizzie Bennet Diaries, what it was, how you conceived it, and take us a little bit briefly through that journey for you, and how you're thinking about your future in this sandbox.
So I'm going to try to fast forward through the Lizzie story to make it more about what I sense that both you and most of the audience wants to know is about the business side of it instead of the creative. Right. So Lizzie Bennet Diaries was conceived as an adaptation of Pride and Prejudice to be a YouTube series. Now, YouTube back then was almost strictly vlogs, spoken to camera. I interpreted that from my partner, Hank Green, brother of John Green, the big author, also now an author himself, Hank, who has a book. Please buy it. There's my plug for my buddy. Anyway, when we came together, I knew that when he said Pride and Prejudice as a YouTube series, he meant that format, not 2-minute clips of 200 minutes of Pride and Prejudice adaptations chopped up into 2 minutes each. So we presented that series as, if you watch it, you'll look at the production design or the production scale is not crazy. It's any of you can do that series. It's one room, it's 4 actresses, the camera stays locked. We shot it on a T2i, just to let you guys know, Canon, okay, nothing crazy. One of the lights we used was a light we bought from Home Depot with a clamp light, all right? So, I mean, this is all real, okay? We didn't go crazy here. And because we didn't pay for cameras or lights, because we borrowed a camera, we paid all of our actors. We're under the unions. We're SAG, WGA, we pay residuals, we pay health and pension while we were running, okay? So not afterward, we were doing it. So we were doing all those things. And now the spirit of it goes like, well, Lizzie Bennet Diaries is 100 episodes. It's 7.5 hours of content, 9.5 hours, you count everything, plus it has the transmedia stuff, which helped us win the Emmy. People go, did you commit to that right away? And here's the key answer. We did not. We did not go into it saying we were going to do the entire book. We went into it to see if it would work. And so what we decided at the time was that we were going to do 24 episodes. They were short minutes, short 3-4 minute episodes. The first 24 are pretty short if you watch them. And we would release them twice a week, Monday and Thursdays. And after 24 by 2, 12 weeks, we would know if it worked or not. If it didn't work, we would have stopped, and we would call it a loss. But it totally worked. And so once it broke out as a hit, we kind of went, all right, well, we spent all of our startup money to make our first 24. We're in week now 8. We kind of need to know if we're going to keep going or take a break or something.
Can I ask a question?
Go.
Did you advertise it? How did it catch on if you were doing it twice a week?
Well, here's the key thing with marketing, as I tangent the marketing. Hank, who has an audience, smaller at the time than he was now, but pretty substantial, tweeted it in the beginning and plugged it. And I would say that he drove the first 10,000 unique eyeballs.
This was exclusively on YouTube?
Exclusively on YouTube. 10,000 unique eyeballs. And we were partnered right away. So we were part of the YouTube partner program. We were getting a cut of the ads right away, okay? So, but that first video, the first 24 hours, did 4,000 views, which sounds like a good number, but it's not really a great number in the amount of scaling for numbers. I mean, that's $2 in your YouTube ads. So, $8, sorry. $8 in YouTube ads. And so that's not earnings. And that was okay to me. 4,000 views day one was fine because we had one video out. I didn't want 1 million views right then because 90% of those people would forget to come back. So I kind of wanted people to come in later. I'm like, so we did no press. We did like one interview with a friend, but we did basically no press at all. And we let the virality kind of pick on. And so here's the big secret of marketing that I think all of us should take when you're marketing content. Marketing will drive people in, but it won't keep people there. Okay? It'll drive people in, but won't keep people there. So if you bring 1 million views in episode 1 and they all just disappear because you've given them nothing else to watch, that's, in my opinion, a complete waste of money, complete waste of resources. So I wanted people to come in later. And there was no rush. We had, as I said, 12 weeks. If anything, we were going to do a marketing spend. We were going to do it 10 weeks in and let them watch 20 videos, and let them binge and get addicted and all that stuff. Luckily for us, the thing that keeps people in is what? Execution, right? This show was executing. People loved it. The audience was growing up. So by the time we were, I guess I'm going to say 8 weeks in, this is a guess. This is not as clear to me as the 4,000 views. I remember that very vividly. We were probably doing about 25 to 40,000 views per video within the first 7 days of that video releasing. Okay, so going back to the first comment, I'm sorry I'm hijacking a lot of this, but I'll try to finish. So when we were about to run out of content, okay, that's the last point. When we got to run out of the content, we had to make a decision. Are we going to stop? Are we going to keep going? Are we going to pause for a bit? We knew we were going to keep going at some point because it was a hit. The audience was there. We knew that was there. And we needed to spend more money. But the show, as I said, was very cheap to make. So we didn't need that much money. And we had a lot of offers from people coming in to invest in the property and so forth and partner up. But deals, as those of you who've done deals before know, they take time. And 12 weeks is really not that much time, even if they come in day one. And even when that thing is signed, when does the money come in? So we realized, we kind of stumbled into this, we realized that the show was doing well enough on YouTube that it had generated about, at that time, $5,000 in YouTube ads for us, profit for us. And we went, oh, well, why don't we just put that back into the show and hopefully that will cover us for the next month or so, because the show, again, was very cheap to make. So that's what kept us going until our deal got made. We signed a deal with a company called Kin Community. They're a YouTube network. They've evolved. We were a YouTube network. They're a big network now. And they funded the show completely. Basically said, we'll pay for the rest of it. We're owners with you. They take a percentage of our ads, but they have no control over what we do with the property. They funded the rest of it, and once that happened, it was a great partnership because they, which is very key in your partner looking, is that they were able to provide resources. Suddenly they had sets, they had cameras, they had things, so again, we could keep the show cheap.
Right.
Okay, I'm gonna stop talking.
Was that
Yeah.
was that at that point an opportunity for you and your collaborators to actually have income that was meaningful for your life?
I mean, meaningful income is a very great term. So I'm going to speak for the artists who work on the show. So the actors and writers, that weren't me. I wasn't an actor, but I was one of the writers. All the writers and all the actors got paid from the beginning, as I said, WJ and SAG. As the show grew, those salaries went up, purposely. And if they didn't request it, we just did it. We just like, hey, we're doing better now. You can tell we're doing better now. We're gonna raise your rates up. These aren't $3,000 a week writer fees and we don't need them that long. We're not making that much content. We're making a little bit of content. And the actors are working 1-2 days a month on set. There's rehearsals and so forth, but they're working 1-2 days a month. So they're not working that much either. So we can give them a pretty good, we'll range it from a couple $100 to $1,000 day rates on these things at the peak, because we were scaling down so much because we were only shooting 2 days a month or so and 1 day a month, and we were only writing 30-40 minutes of content a month. So we could do that. And of course I took a fee because it was a full-time job for me. It was certainly not a lucrative full-time job for me as a fee, but especially if you dive into the series and look at all the transmedia and all the social media that it's known for. I was also a big part of that, but it was something where, why do we do this? We're all artists here. If we really wanted to make money, we'd be going to Wall Street, right, and becoming a hedge fund manager or something. It wasn't about the money. It was about the challenge, the love of the art, and it's about making enough. And at that point, I felt we were making enough.
Well, we're going to just stay on this for a couple more minutes.
Okay, I feel really bad.
No, we're gonna jump in.
Okay.
But just talk us through just a couple of the ways in which you monetized this series, because I think that's really interesting to think about and for this audience to know.
Sure. While the show was running, now Lizzie Bennet Diaries, if those of you taking notes, a lot of people like to take these notes, there are 6 revenue streams, and I'm going to tell you all 6 of them. While it was running, there were only 2, okay? Number 1, the YouTube ads, as I hinted to, and number 2, the merchandising. So we put some merchandise out. In my opinion, our merchandise isn't very good, but you can still buy it if you choose to. There is a really cool teacup, I must say, that sells really well. Anyway, but in retrospect, it didn't do that much. So we had 2 revenue streams. When the show was ending, that's when the audience was at its biggest, and that's when suddenly a bunch of revenue streams kind of opened up to us. So number 3, we'll call it affiliate marketing. It's like product placement. You put something in the videos, and you link to it, and you sell it, and you get a partnership for that, or someone pays you to do it. We didn't do anything direct paid from Lizzie Bennet, but we did link to some things, and these were small percentages. We did much better with this on our second series, Emma. Number 4, DVDs. We talked about this in the room. You're like, wait, it's a YouTube series. It's free. It's still free, by the way. Go watch it. It does 1 million views a month. It's still free. But there were certain fans that really wanted a DVD set. It's a 7.5-hour series. We didn't know how many we could sell, so we did a Kickstarter. This is in the era of Veronica Mars and Zach Braff, right around the same time, by the way, just so you know the time period. And we figured if we sold 1,000 DVDs, it is a pre-sale at about $50 a piece. It's a box set, 7.5 hours. We could break even and produce this DVD set. The Kickstarter went crazy, and we sold about 5,700 DVDs in the Kickstarter. At the time when we finished, we had 462,000 on that Kickstarter. A lot of merch was sold in that too. And so we were the 6th or 7th highest Kickstarter at the time in film and television. So like we were below Veronica, and Zach hadn't finished yet. And to date, we've sold, I think, 7,000 DVDs. By the way, the guilds all know this. I know it's live stream, but you all know this if you're on the guilds. So I've told you. and the sets are $55 to $60 a piece. Our profits in them, again, being transparent, our profits in them are probably around $32, I want to say, dollars per DVD set because of the manufacturing and the shipping and all that stuff. And so there's that. Next is VOD. We talked about this in the room. So VOD is you buy the thing on Amazon, iTunes, Google Play, right? Again, it's that weird thing. It's like, why would you do that if things still free on YouTube? But people do. People do. And I'm not judging them. People are different than me. That's fine. Like, they just
worked for you.
Yeah, they choose to dye that. They love the property. They want to have the digital thing. Now, the digital cell has all the behind the scenes stuff too, which is not on YouTube. So be fair, there is something they're getting content wise. And if they feel like they feel ownership, whatever. So that does really well for us as well, even though the show has been over for a couple years. And then the sixth one, ironically, when the show was ending, one of the writers on the show, this woman named Kate Rourke, great TV writer and novelist, key word here, presented the idea of whether we should do a novel based on the series, based on a novel. And we did it. So you can purchase The Secret Diary of Lizzie Bennet Diaries at all major booksellers. It was published in 2013. And there's a sequel, and it's published in Portuguese and France and German, and it blows my mind thinking about it. But it is, I'm pretty sure we're first here, it is the first book based on a web series based on a book.
Could I ask one so you said after that first chunk, then somebody came in and started financing the whole thing.
Yeah, we had offers right away. When you
Right.
have a hit series out there,
Yeah.
people are going to call.
But my question is, from that point forward, all these revenue streams and profits you're talking about were split between you and that entity, right?
No. That deal with our company, they take strictly, I want to say, ad revenue. Maybe I'll be correct with that. But
Wow.
but they own part of the company. So sure, if we ever actually did a profit participation distribution, which we have not, IRS, which we have not, they would take their cut. But they're taking revenue from the ad services. They still sell ads against our YouTube content, which, as I said, does 1 million views.
So you're saying then you are getting 100% of the merch and the DVDs and all the others?
The company is, yes.
Wow.
So we formed a company that houses Lizzie Bennet Diaries and its subsequent series, Emma Approved, and the other series we've done under that banner. And that company keeps it all. So it's not Bernie Sue, the individual. It is the company that has it, which has owners, which I am part of. And so it's pretty awesome. I'm not going to lie, it's pretty awesome. Now, of course, there are things in the deals with not just any deal that you kind of go, oh, I wish that was better, blah, blah, blah. But no, absolutely not. I think they've been absolutely stellar partners. They've been entirely hands-off. I mean, this is a crazy thing I'll give you guys as a creator to creator. We've done 4 shows under the banner. They have never given me a single no. Not one. And I've asked for them. I'm like, do you guys want to see the scripts? Do you guys want to approve anything? They're like, no, we trust you. And to be fair, as a creator, you have to honor that trust. And you have to honor that, hey, this company has its brand too. And what is that brand? And so that brand is a kind of a very wholesome family, female-oriented brand. And so what we did in the show is like, I think we've only, in 15 hours of content, we've sweared once. And it was we felt we earned that swear. And so we've kept it very, very wholesome through the entire series to be good partners.
Imagine if you strayed too far, you'd start to get a note or two.
Yeah, sure. I'm sure. Like if YouTube videos got flagged for obscenities or something, I'm sure they would know. They would absolutely know right away, and then I would know, and then we'd have a conversation.
All right, we're going to jump into...
All right, go to something else.
Stop talking. Thank you, by the way, into Leimert Park. And I want Stephanie to talk about, sort of the conception of the series, how you thought about it at the beginning, how macro got involved, how you define success for that series.
Sure. So it's Leimert. I know everybody says Leimert, but that's okay. It's Leimert Park. This is really the brainchild of Mel Jones, who lived in Leimert Park with 12 roommates over 7 years. And she really wanted to capture that feeling of her girlfriends and their searches for love and sex and whatever else they're looking for. At the time I was running the LA Film Festival, she was my assistant. So she just said, what can I do? I want to do something. And I said, just go do it, because you can sit around and people do all the time just talking about what you want to do, but basically go do it. So she roped in 2 of her friends, Kadi Kamakate and Davida Scarlett, And they spent time just breaking the show and figuring out what they wanted to do and creating a lookbook and mapping it out and thinking about the arcs. And Charles King's Macro, which is a very well-funded company in all areas of content. Aaliyah Williams wasn't working there, but she wanted to go there, and she said she wanted to do this. Charles loved it. Charles was my agent many years ago. So it just really came together very, very quickly. We shot for 2 weeks last December, and then it took us a year to post it because we had movies to make. And there was no deadline. There was nobody expecting it. So we just literally, she worked on it while we were in Richmond, Virginia, and wherever else we were. And then, and we got it to a place where, you know, we thought it was pretty good. And then we were trying to figure out what to do with it. Because that's what's so great about, like you were saying, all these new formats, like there's no roadmap, so you're just trying to figure it out. And at a certain point, we thought we would self-distribute, and then we remembered that you had the lab, so literally on the last day, I made an application and submitted it, what we had. And then we sort of just, you know, waited around and noodled on it, and then we got in, and then we're like, oh my God, we have to finish this. We have to finish it now. I was the Foley artist for the entire show. You listen to it.
Excellent Foley.
That's how detailed we got in finishing it. So now we had our big premiere yesterday. It was amazing. We got an amazing review from Hollywood Reporter. So we're literally trying, and we have a lot of interest, to be honest, from a lot of the traditional platforms across the board. But we really want to show what we made, because so often these things are really proof of concept. If you sell it to some big entity, they'll be like, this is so great, now let's change everything. So we didn't want to do that. We wanted people to see the sort of homegrown, really just put together thing that we did. And so we are going to figure that out, whether we're going to self-distribute it or whether we're going to make a deal with a bigger entity, but make sure that we can distribute it as is, because we're convinced that there is, that we can build this audience, like Bernie was saying, and then monetize that, use that audience for leverage in whatever we do, whether we do another season. It's 6 10-minute episodes. So whether we do another season and continue to build that audience, or we get it out there so that we do have that audience and then go right to a series. So I don't know, we're just figuring it out.
Yeah. I mean, it's great that you.
But you said what's success?
Yeah.
Eyeballs on it. That's really what success is for us. We just want people to see it, and then we'll figure it out.
I have a question on this. So 2 questions. So Macro was in with Aaliyah way back when you first shot it, and we just sat on it.
Yes, so
Okay.
so Macro and I own it,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, they didn't sit on it because we had made it, so then we had to finish it.
Of course.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And so the second question, going to the eyeballs thing. So I was at your premiere yesterday, so I saw it. Very good. I did. So I'm going to ask you a business question though, not the artist question. So then the ideal scenario for you, what is the win? Like, what do you want to happen for the 6 episodes? Because right now, the only people who are going to see it are the people here, right?
Well, no, because we're gonna release it. That's what we're talking about.
We're going to release it, no matter what happens.
Yes, correct.
Okay. And you will make that decision when that decision
That's
of
right.
where to release it.
That's right, because
Okay.
we may get into a great deal with somebody that's like, I love this TV show. I want to see these black women on our screen. And we're going to give you money to make another season of it so that we can build that audience. Mm-hmm. Or, you know, so we really don't know. This is kind of the Wild West. This is what's so exciting.
Yeah. It's so exciting that you
but again,
made it. Yeah.
It's all about finishing something, right? Because so often, you know, even if it's a process that takes, we did ours in 2 weeks straight. We shot it in 2 weeks, as you would any kind of movie. But some people do, like The Adulterers, they shot every weekend for a year or something. I mean, you know, it's whatever you can do. But the point is, finish it. Because 99% of the people don't.
And there, you know, and I think what you're hearing is there's no roadmap, there's no right or wrong. And and it is sort of setting your goals and being able to think about what does success mean for this particular project. I'm going to move to Stephen because you have a really exciting new project called Mosaic.
Oh yeah.
I've read about it. I haven't experienced it, and it's it's interactive storytelling. And now there's an app for it. So describe what it is, what the experience is, and also what your hope for it is, and what you learn. So it's a lot of questions, but it's just kind of working through, sort of presenting what you're trying to accomplish with it.
Well, I mean, as I said, I've never been a snob about where people see things, although I'm really glad that all of this social media didn't exist when I was a young filmmaker, particularly when I was in high school and right after, because I was such a punk. And I had very strong opinions, and if I expressed those on social media, I don't know if I would have had a career. But instead of being somebody who is sort of stuck in a version of the business, particularly the movie business that doesn't exist anymore, I've been trying to look forward and see how people are watching things, and became more and more interested in this idea of designing something to be watched on your phone or your iPad or now, Apple TV and things like that. But something that was not diminished by being seen in that format, but was enhanced by being with that format because you can touch it and become engaged with it. I had issues. I'm not a gamer, and I didn't want it to feel like a game. I wanted the kind of control that I'm used to as a filmmaker in terms of curating the experience enough to make me feel that I'm not asking the viewer to do my job, and that it was an enhancement of a narrative experience as opposed to a distraction. So we spent a lot of, as you often do in these things, you spend a lot of time figuring out what it is by defining what you don't want it to be, until you end up with something that feels good instinctually. I don't know, it's very early days in terms of the app version of Mosaic. I was very aware while we were making it that it was kind of a cave painting. We already have 2 other projects we're developing that are much more complex than Mosaic. And that's what I was hoping for, another filmmaker coming in and taking what we did and running with it. And as far as indie TV, one of the things I've tried to do as a producer is bring this sort of independent filmmaking approach to the television shows that I've worked on. This can be either a single director for the entire season, or in the case of The Girlfriend Experience, a team designed in such a way that they have absolute creative freedom, that I'm running interference for them between whoever's paying for it and them. They only have to talk to me. And so the good news is when you work like that, you can block shoot as though it's a film and save a lot of money. And also, when you have one person making all the decisions for all the episodes, there's a unification of elements that you just can't get any other way. Obviously, the actors like it a lot. So that's been my sort of Trojan horse, is trying to bring a sort of independent auteur functionality to episodic television, where typically the writer showrunner is the person at the top of the pyramid.
And this is a partnership, as I've read, with HBO, correct? And what does that mean? What is that partnership?
They pay for it.
Excellent.
And there's an understanding, because this is such a new format, to keep going. Like, let's do another one. Let's see where this is gonna. Let's see what there's the. Richard Plepler was. And Michael Lombardo at the time were the two people that I made a prototype. I made a 15-minute prototype that looks, you know, pretty much like what we ended up with in terms of how you navigated. And I think they saw the potential of it very clearly and just said, we want to be a part of this. So we're just gonna keep seeing where it goes. I think it's a legitimate format. It's certainly something that I'd be interested in doing again. I think, strangely, there are huge comedic possibilities in this branching narrative format.
I would be willing to work with you.
Okay, good. Because comedy is about context and people getting things wrong and interpreting, like the ability to sort of do an exploded view of an 8-person dinner party in this format, I think could be really fun. So we're just going to keep trying.
When does it come out?
The app came out in November. The linear broadcast version is airing every night this week.
Oh, wow. Good.
Shot in Park City.
Really? All right, tune in. Okay, David, moving to you. You've been an EP and director on the long-running digital series Children's Hospital. I want you to talk about your experience. You know, it's 7 years, I think.
Yeah.
What you've learned. I know Adult Swim came in and what that meant for the series. Yeah.
Kind of what has been striking me listening to everything here, and the whole idea that the content can determine different ways of production and distribution now in a way that never was the case when it was more rigid. Would be for me to compare two things that I've done recently. One is that Children's Hospital, and the other is Wet Hot American Summer, the Netflix series. We did 2 miniseries on Netflix. And, well, with Children's Hospital, it began 10 years ago during the writer's strike when Rob Corddry really just wanted something to do, and he decided to come up with this idea of doing a very silly show that takes place in a very unsilly place, the Children's Hospital. But he pulled in, I think we got a little bit of money from Warner Digital, which was just starting up at the time, but we shot for 1 week, 10 episodes, extremely low budget, but brought in an A-list cast of friends just for fun. You know, the idea of a web series was very new at the time too. But as I was saying earlier, that was the creative groundwork for defining a TV series in a way that I don't think we could have ever done so well just by writing out a pitch sheet and thinking about it and talking about it, and so and even writing scripts. And then it was picked up by Adult Swim in a more conventional way, but Adult Swim itself is run in an unconventional way in that network is essentially one guy who says, I think this is cool, let's do it, and left us largely alone for 7 seasons. And then from a production point of view, the one thing of interest to me was that we were working with this pretty high visibility cast where our show was maybe their 4th priority in terms of their financial life and what they were doing and what, as far as their reps were concerned. And so we built the show around flexibility to their schedules. And so you keep all these actors going for the whole season by saying, come in whenever you can and leave when you have to. And we built a production apparatus that made that possible. And then over time, it was a 15-minute show also, which was really cool. And it was perfect for the format that we were doing. It was like, they were almost like the format of an hour-long dramatic show squeezed into a 15-minute, 11-minute, and 20 seconds actually, very funny, dense little piece every week. And it stayed on for a really long time, and we made a bunch of episodes and won several Emmys, and it became a really great playground for us to try a lot of things and work with a lot of great people. And then as a slightly different example, just to mention it, is we pitched the idea of doing a prequel to the movie that I brought to Sundance in 2001, Wet Hot American Summer, as a limited series on Netflix. And the reason we did that is because we had originally thought, let's do a movie, but we had so much material and it seemed so much more wide-ranging, and it seemed like, oh, Netflix is a perfect brand new format for this. It's not quite a series. And we did it in 8 episodes. They had said, let's do 10, and we were like, you know what? It feels like 8 to us from a creative and from a process point of view. And so they were like, sure, 8. And then, so we made 8 half hours. And like you were saying, you know, we had one director. I directed the whole thing. And that, again, even in a more extreme way, enabled us to have, you know, Paul Rudd come in for 2 days and be in every single episode. And a lot of the cast doing a similar schedule, and us block shooting the whole thing. And it's continuing to inspire me as I hear all these stories that there's absolutely no one way to skin the cat. And it's exciting.
Yeah, it is exciting.
And I'll also say, because I'm working with Netflix on Dear White People, which was an independent movie. We showed here for the first time, premiered here. And it was the same thing. It was an ensemble movie, but showing it episodically gave us the opportunity to really dive into those characters. And we're just finishing up season 2 now, so it's super exciting.
Talk about, just for another moment, we're going to stay with you, David, about Wainy Days.
So, okay, yeah. Wainy Days was another web series that I worked on. It's based on, my name is David Wain, and it's about me. But in the slightly early-ish days of the web, which was, I guess, around 2006-07, this guy, Rob Barnett, was starting up a website called My Damn Channel, and he basically said, hey, I'll give you a few bucks to make a series of shorts about whatever you want, and the only requirement is that you hand them to me, and I don't need to know what it's about or what you're doing, just give them to me and I will give you the money. And I was like, well, that sounds good, you know, because usually you're pushing against all these things, so I'm like, what am I going to do? And I came up with this concept of each episode would be about a different woman that I try to meet and screw it up with in some way, based on exactly what happened to me in my life over the years. And it was, again, a way to do something that was, each episode was so low stakes on its own, and I was able to go into, from a comedic point of view, very personal areas and not worry about any of the normal marketing parameters that you worry about. And then over time, as he was saying, like, the audience comes and it gets more established, and it became a thing where then eventually, by the end of the series, we had sponsorship, and the Fiat company gave me a car.
Wait, was that YouTube? Where was that?
It was actually it was on their website, My Damn Channel.
Oh,
it was sort of before YouTube was like the main thing, and then eventually they kind of merged with YouTube, and this My Damn Channel is now defunct, but it's on YouTube.
That's great. I want to talk about, and then we're going to throw it to the audience. I want to talk about audience and marketing and finding your audience online, and any tactics that have worked for you. I know, Bernie, you have some ideas, but I'd love to hear from everyone about that, because it's one thing making something, but the other 50% or more is how do you engage that audience? Yeah.
Am I going first? Okay,
yeah.
Fine, I'll go first. All right, so again, a lot of opinions on this. So there's a lot of ways to skin this cat too, by the way. When you're having a slow rollout, as Lizzie Bennet Diaries was, the marketing wasn't that key. It was execute. And if we need the marketing, we would inject. Now, in contrast, you have another show I did. I think it's independent. We can have the debate, but we'll not. It's called Vanity. It was in 2015. It was a series done by Style Hall, that network. It had Denise Richards in it. It had Maybelline as a brand sponsor. It had 12 episodes, and Maybelline's arrangement was that it had to come out during the campaign of their summer. So I had to get, all 12 episodes had to be released in a 12-week period. Yeah, that's right. And so but Maybelline, of course, knows how to market. So the marketing of that was partially Style Hall, which also knows how to market, and Maybelline, which knows how to market as well. So the benefit of that project, which I think of very fondly, no complaints, certainly a lot of challenges, no doubt, but was that the synergy between us, the creative team, and delivering good product, and then the marketing team going, okay, we're going to get it out there, worked really, really well. So I'm going to bring this into what I'm talking about, which is that you have to find an audience, and what's great is to partner with someone who already has the audience, like a Maybelline, like a Style Hall. If you watch that show, you know those two brands. It's like parallel synergy of what that show we did, and you find that. The great thing about the internet, especially now with the democratization of the internet, as we've all talked about, is that there are niches for everything. So even though if I didn't know you and I wasn't at Sundance and I stumbled upon your show, I am not the audience. But when I watched your show, I'm like, okay, I know there's an audience for this show. It exists. Whether it's big enough to support the show, we'll find out together. We won't know. But that it exists out there. So I think it's best, if you were going to go into the marketing side of this, is to find where those niches are. Pride and Prejudice, Jane Austen, damn right there's an audience out there. They're there. They're out there. Whether they like our show or not, well, that's on us to execute. But they're there. And so that's why I think my stance on this marketing. The internet today, last point, is so mature now that marketing is now expensive. You have to pay to promote on Facebook. You have to pay to promote on these platforms, or else they'll push you down on the feeds and so forth. So it's a little trickier. So you kind of have to be more of a hustler in finding where those forums, those Facebook groups, those Reddit feeds, those groups, those communities are online. And if you have something super niche, I'm not saying yours is super niche, but you're here.
I just want to say,
you got to find them.
Black women got Doug Jones elected in Alabama.
So great.
We're gonna have an audience.
You're gonna have an audience, like I said. I'm not the audience, but they're out there, and that's what matters for your show.
On Dear White People, Justin had a Twitter account, and in that Twitter account, he asked Dear White People this and that. And that really sparked a lot of controversy, a lot of interest, and that was before we did the what do you call it, the trailer that went out, and with the Kickstarter campaign. So that was one way of engaging and creating an audience and an interest in just the title, Dear White People, way before the movie was even scripted.
Well, as a cat person, all these skinning references are a real trigger.
About how to cook a cat in a pot and boil them up.
Trigger warning. Trigger warning.
But I'm going to work past that. No, I think the great thing about this format is that it's character driven, and it's not about spectacle. So you're ultimately not really competing with other projects that have huge funds behind them, because the people that are attracted to seeing it are attracted to the concept. So, when you go, a lot of Jane Austen fans, this is a book in public domain, I can go and run with that. And just the phrase, Dear White People, you're like, okay, I want to know what that's about. You've got to have a hook. You've got to have a gimmick. Like, you have to there's so much noise, and you got to figure out, how do I become the signal? And that's by, having an element that has a cultural hook that can at least get people started. And then, like you said, they show up and look at it and they don't like it, that's on you. But if you don't have something that, when they scan across all the options that are available, they don't stop for a second and go, what's that? Then you didn't have a good idea.
David, any thoughts? Yeah.
Nothing further to add. I mean, I've never been super directly involved in. I mean, whenever I have anything, I try to get social media out there. But I am not an expert in marketing, and I feel like you kind of have to be more and more, no matter what your job title is. So I'm listening and learning.
I remember hearing on a panel a while ago, going viral is not a business plan.
Right.
I thought, yep, you're right.
I mean, I was involved once in a branded short that I was hired to make. Then the idea was to not even let the audience know that it was for a product and let it go viral. And it was easily the least successful thing I've ever been involved in, because it just, that artificiality just never, it's the organic stuff that seems to make more sense.
All right, so I have a lot more questions, but I want to open to the audience. Yeah, go ahead, right there. You. No, that's you. Yes.
Microphone.
Oh.
Thank you so much for all your inputs. It was very delightful to listen to all of these things. I'm a production sound mixer, on set, on location. Oh, thank you, appreciate it. Business cards right here. No, so my question is, because you always get the dreadful sentence, "We'll fix it in post." Knowing that if you have a small budget, being in an indie production, you now are actually making your budget even larger by trying to fix it in post instead of taking the time to do it right on set. Do you guys have any tips and tricks to keep your budget as low as possible?
Well, I was having this conversation with somebody 2 days ago, and I said, you can make something, it can be the shittiest looking video you've ever seen in your life. If people cannot understand the dialogue clearly, you're done. Spend money on great production sound. I'm not kidding.
And time.
It's interesting that you're here, because that, for whatever reason, psychologically, people cannot stand it when the sound's bad. So that's my 2 cents.
And on Leimert Park, it was very little money to make it, and so we literally put all the money in making the show and shooting it, and then we're like, oh shit, now we got to post it. And that was very arduous because we didn't have enough money to keep an editor the whole time, so we had to roll. Some editor would say, I gotta go, I can't do this anymore, and then we go to another editor, and then they would say they couldn't do it, we go to so planning, whatever you're doing, even if it's the smallest thing, post is so important, just what Stephen was saying. I mean, if you can't hear it, if the Foley's not good, it won't feel real, you won't be engaged in it, so definitely plan for post.
I do think, though, that it's not black and white, the point you're making, at all. And post has become, just like production, so much more accessible to anyone. And the software and hardware of post-production is advancing so much. And I do think that the ability to fix certain things in post has enabled you to shoot things that you couldn't otherwise shoot. And I know when I'm involved in something where I have to move incredibly fast and I'm on a low budget, that if there's something in the frame that's in the way, and I can just move on and know we'll take it out, or if it's pouring rain and the sound it's hitting the roof, which it's happened so many times, that you can, okay, I'll replace the dialogue in this scene, or whatever. And I feel like it's a balance, though, because as you said, I also agree, oftentimes you're just pushing the can down the line and you're wasting money in post that you could have just more easily done on set, which I've also done, especially with VFX.
My stance on this is preparation. So the cheapest part of production, I think, is by far. So if you spend the most of your time there, you'll save the most money.
Right.
Agreed.
Yeah, for Mr. Soderbergh, cinematically you had this ultra...
Mic coming.
Sorry, yeah. For Mr. Soderbergh, you know, as a filmmaker, you had this great, beautiful cinematic style and camera work and realism. And I've noticed that as you've moved over into cable and digital, your disciples have maintained this. I'm glad you mentioned the Girlfriend Experience, Scott Frank and Godless, your own work in the Nick. How are you able to maintain that level of quality and I guess that real feel that your work has on the different episodic, you know, we've already mentioned budgets, but just the episodic mindset and storytelling set that you've had in your great films?
Well, look, I think there's a shift that's taking place gradually in terms of film to digital. We're very close to being in an all digital world all the time. And again, I was never emotional about this. I just viewed it as evolution. There's the problem is that as a cinematographer, they require you to kind of invert a lot of ideas that you've learned, and digital works at the best when you work at the very, very toe of the sensor and shooting wide open. And every time you pull a light off the truck, you're probably going to make it look worse. And so for some people, that's an issue. I remember shooting in Dublin on Haywire with a very experienced Irish gaffer who was terrific and had an incredible list of credits. and we were screening some footage at the wrap party. We had it up on a monitor, silent, just running in a loop, some sequences. And he goes, wow, I'm really glad I'm not coming up now. And I said, why? And he goes, well, what is there for me to do? We did all the prep. All the lights when we shot on a location were either practical or built into the set. And that was that. And I said, well, but all the conversation now takes place beforehand. You know, I love not having 20 trucks of equipment following us around. But again, it gets into that thing of, well, what am I doing then if I'm the director of photography, if this is all sort of available light? And, you know, I get it. I just think reality is a very difficult thing to beat. So a lot of the people that I'm working with, like Lodge Kerrigan and Amy Simons, and Scott Frank through Stephen Meisler, who was my first assistant cameraman on 15 movies, they have the same approach, which is you start with what's real, and unless you've got something that beats real, you go with the real.
Someone from this side, someone in the back. Jump in, yeah.
I'm a film student at Syracuse University, and I really am interested in the form of mosaic because it seems like you're working from like the French New Wave, like creating a new form through these episodic pieces. But there's not really a platform for young filmmakers to do something like that with the back end and infrastructure required to make an app and like a streaming service or HBO to give you backing for that. So does HBO have plans to create a platform for people to make stories in that form, or is that something that people are going to have to do themselves?
Good question. I think as technology advances, that is going to be possible for somebody to do on a small scale. You'd be surprised at how small our tech team was and how ultimately, compared to the production budget of the show, how little money we spent actually creating the app. And as far as having a platform that you support, I mean, this is what all these web services are for that you can rent.
I mean, it wouldn't be so different if you put Mosaic on YouTube and just link to the next pieces.
Absolutely.
You know,
yeah.
You could do that right now. People have done kind of threaded adventures through YouTube. It's definitely far clunkier than the Mosaic app. I feel it's very seamless and very elegant, but it can be done. You can cross-link into things. YouTube can do it. I'm sure the other platforms you could do it. Some of the platforms you can do as well.
I do think young filmmakers will innovate in that area too and invent their own apps and their own ways of doing it.
Yeah, I think that's going to be possible and doable. Of course, I'm going to sue them, but
quoted.
Yes. Yeah.
She's coming.
Someone's getting a lot of exercise.
So Tamara and I are kind of aspiring writers, and we were actually at the event this morning with Diablo Cody, and she talked about the same issue that you guys have touched on in terms of this, explosion of content and standing out. And, she mentioned that, for her the most important thing would be voice. And you guys have also touched on cultural hook, and I'm curious if you guys have other advice for new writers specifically in terms of how to stand out. And just, what kind of screenplays you think we need more of, and what kind of screenplays you guys would like to see more of.
Is it just screenplays?
Other things too.
Well, that's your first question. I would say authenticity, and someone else talk while I think of the rest of it.
Yeah, whatever's in you. I mean, don't look for what the market trend is or what somebody else is doing. What's going to make whatever you have uniquely special is that it comes from you. So look in.
Okay, I have it. So
he's got an idea.
Yeah. So I think my advice to you and the other writers who are trying to break in is obviously there's the body of work, and that's not changed. Get better at the craft. Be authentic. Do the things you said. The other thing I think that can really give you a leg up is kind of build your own kind of audience voice as well, with your own type of content. And we're in an age now that we can all make content right now. We all have phones in our pockets that can film at high resolutions right now and upload them to Facebook and YouTube today. So I encourage you to figure out what that is for yourself. And it doesn't have to be perfect right away. You can experiment with stuff. Today I want to talk about these issues because that's what it means. That's what it means to me. And I'm going to talk about it this way because that's the way I tell my stories. I just believe we're in this era of social reach. I'm not saying to be an influencer. I'm not saying to go and be gratuitous about it. I'm saying just to get your voice out there to more people. That's a really organic way to do it. And you're seeing that in the digital indie space. A lot of things that are getting scooped up are not like the biggest viral hit or the biggest pitch show with the biggest attachments. It's these kind of little things that a couple moms together have done this thing and it picked up in this era, this marketplace, and then it goes into development for a TV show. Like that's what's hitting in the indie episodic space. So I recommend if there's something you want to try to do, tell a story you want to tell it and show it to people.
I agree. Screenplays and scripts are blueprints for something that's going to be made, and so everyone has the ability to start making those things, and I wouldn't wait.
There's a quote that I loved, which is, bend the world to your heart. Don't bend your heart to the world.
Justin Bieber.
Justin Bieber, exactly. No, it was Jay Van Hoy, a producer.
He has it tattooed on his arm.
Well, I do too, you know. All right. Yeah, back there with the cap on, black and white T-shirt.
So also a question coming from a writing perspective, but also could apply to all areas of filmmaking. So LA is a big place with a lot of people. For those of us that are not living in the world of Los Angeles, what do you recommend in this kind of changing industry as we're trying to get our content out there? Do you recommend that we try and break into the LA industry, or kind of just make content where we are, or move into some of these smaller industries like Atlanta and Austin and Toronto, places like that?
Craig Brewer is a regional filmmaker. He lives in Memphis, Tennessee. He makes all his movies there. And he uses his connections and the familiarity of the people that he knows there to do his thing. And it's distinctly his essence that's coming out of those stories. So where do you live? Here. Oh, awesome. So yeah, so do some Park City-based stuff.
Yeah, I don't. It's gotten so decentralized now. I don't think anybody that I know is thinking of, Los Angeles as prerequisite for making something happen. And as we were saying just a minute ago, I think there's a real universality and specificity, and so the more specific that you can be, the better. And also, I learned later than I should have, that genre is a great delivery system for ideas. Because two things are happening. You're satisfying the audience's interest in that genre by basically respecting the pillars of the genre, or riffing on them or inverting them. And then as a filmmaker, you get to inject all of your personal preoccupations into it as kind of the bottom. And they don't even have to know that, the audience, while they're watching it, that these are issues that you're really interested in. They're just watching the genre happen. So that's be my advice, is work on something that's in a genre that people are already attracted to without even knowing who you are.
I know Stephanie has to leave.
I do. Thank you so much. I had such a good time.
We did too with you, but if there's one thing you want to leave the audience with in terms of your work spanning, several decades, but also, but also, I said several.
Can you just sum up your whole career real quick?
No, the only thing I say, it's so true, and the older you get, the more you know. We were talking about this in the green room. It's just truly follow your gut, because you're gonna win or lose. And if you lose following somebody else's gut, then you got to deal with that. Yeah. So that's it. Thank you guys so much. Bye.
Okay, we have time for a couple more questions. Let's go to this side in the back. Yes, you with a hand up still. Oh, no, well, yes, go ahead. Go for it.
Sorry. Hi. I just wanted to first make you guys aware of a resource that I started, and then I have a question, if that's all right. I started I'm a cinematographer. I started a website called Cinematographers XX that's a heavily curated, some people know about it maybe, heavily curated site where you can access female cinematographers. So I want to say that. And then I feel like we probably mostly in here know that the conversation about women in the industry is on the uptick right now. And we have statistics in like major studio stuff. It's like 7% directors, female directors, 4% female cinematographers. So I was wondering, in the indie space where you guys are, do you notice a difference in the numbers, or is it kind of feel the same? I mean, and you may not have statistics in your head, but...
I mean, all I can talk about is the shows that I've worked on.
Yeah.
I'm a guy, but all the work I've done has been primarily targeted to women. The Lizzie Bennet writer team was 2 guys and 6 women. The Emma approved writer team, I was the only guy who ever wrote a credit on that show. That was a 72 episode show, so I think there were 7 other writers credited on that show. They're all women. The other directors on those 2 shows, all women. The crew for Emma, I don't remember, the crew for Lizzie was so small that it was just so, there was like, you know, yeah, our production director was a woman, but our cinematographer was a guy. But on Emma Approved, it was like people would come to visit the set, and this was back in 2013, before we had these conversations really, and people would go like, wow, there's like a lot of women on set. Not in a good way, you know. I don't want to make it sound like it's a guy coming in and it's like, yeah, there's a lot of women. No, it wasn't that. There were people visiting set, and they were just surprised to see the amount of women we had on set, and so forth. So for me, it's been very natural in the sense that the shows that I'm working on are targeted to women, as more than likely it's going to be written by women, especially if I'm already a guy on the show. So that's my look at it. I'm curious to see what you guys do. What do you guys have seen?
It's slowly changing. The good news is everybody's talking about it all the time. Everybody I know is talking about it all the time and is trying to do whatever they can to address the fact that we need a more diverse everything.
I know that's the discussion at the DGA a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah. So, but I mean, it's ultimately up to the people running any specific production to be aware of this and active in trying to correct it. But certainly, I've got 2 projects going right now that are series that I'm going to hire female directors to take over, and so I just think it's not going to go as fast as we would like, but I think it's going to. I think we're in the cultural movement that's happening right now is a huge accelerant. So I think at least now you're going to see it moving more quickly than it was a year ago even. I mean, look what's happened in 6 months just in terms of the conversation. And I don't think that's going away. I think we're looking at a form of regime change. So it's going to be a little messy for a while, but it's going to move in the right direction, I think.
I agree. I feel like this topic has permeated every ounce of what I do every day since it really started heating up on October 8th of last year. And I feel like there's no aspect of what I'm doing, from writing to thinking about hiring to anything, that I don't think about differently and in a new way every day now. And I also am just following and trying to participate in the conversation the best I can.
Yeah, it was weird. It was almost like a cultural version of a vaccination. Like once this started, there is no version of what we're doing in which this isn't foremost in your mind. There's no going back to the way it was. So I think it's one of those, like a lot of things, everybody's known it needed to change for a long time, and it doesn't until suddenly it does. And so we're in the middle of that right now. It's actually really exciting. We have a couple of films that came out this year that we're spectacular, that were female-driven from beginning to end. Every time that happens, 2 more doors open. You know, it's just, but it's, there's no, this stream is now running in a direction that's not going to be reversed.
Yeah, and there's a lot of momentum. It's a real cultural shift, which is really exciting for, you know, for women, for diversity. But I think it's for everyone. It's for audiences. So it's major, and we aren't going to go back. Yeah, we have time, unfortunately, for just one more question.
Better be good.
It better be good, yes. Steve,
Put your hand down if it's not a great question.
Oh, hand higher if it's a great question. All right, I'm going to go for you. Yes.
This is a lot of pressure. I'm a journalist. I'm from Broadcast Magazine. I was just wondering, basically, where indie TV is going to live. For example, when platforms like Facebook and Netflix get involved, is that still indie TV? What are the boundaries, and you know, what is that going to look in the future?
That's a good question.
It will absolutely live there. Any platform that's involved. I mean, you were at an independent film festival, would you say? Yes. And you see, you know, Amazon and Netflix have scooped up many of the past films here, and if they scoop up an indie television show like hers that just premiered yesterday, that got a great review on THR, that I still think it counts as independent. So yeah, absolutely. I think there is this, and we saw this kind of correction of those of you who do follow or don't follow the digital indie series industry. It's a kind of market correction last year. We had so many streaming services, just one every week it felt like, and then all these ones had like little pocket ones, like NBC had 2 different ones, Universal had 2 different ones, and you saw them kind of fall off because of the market correction of people kind of rushing to the Netflix, Amazons, and Hulus. So I think that will exist. And the second one that a lot of people just kind of miss is the niche platform. So for an example, MGM, I believe, has a Stargate SVOD platform, which is just like, I think it's like $5 a month for everything Stargate. The only place you can watch Stargate online legally is this platform. It's $5 a month, and it has their new indie series that they did for Stargate. That's all it offers, and it's like, but you go like, well,
where do I not sign up for that?
Yeah, go ahead, look it up. I don't know where it is exactly, but like, not everybody's audience is a $5 a month Stargate fan, but there's enough there that will support that platform, and it's, from what I'm hearing, it's working. So you'll see a lot of those. So there's one also called, I forgot what it's called, but it's about, like, it's with romance novels, like romance novel movies, and it just launched, and I hear it's doing very well. So you have these niches that the mainstream media won't talk about because it's just not big enough, and that's fine. But as long as they support enough of their own content, they'll survive.
As long as there's a cat in it.
That's not skinned.
It's going to work.
Okay, David.
What was the question?
You got anything?
Definition of indie, what feature?
Oh, well, I mean, but it's always. I feel like this conversation was discussed in Sundance in '93, the first year I was here. The same thing, which is what defines indie, and I kind of don't think the question is that important in a weird way. Like, it's an independent vision or a personal vision or anything. You know, I feel like the work I did at Netflix that was financed by Netflix was incredibly indie because nobody told us what to do, and it was completely a pure, unified vision of the people that were making it. And so that's one way to describe it. Yeah.
Steven Spielberg's been an independent filmmaker since June 20th, 1975.
Yeah.
So yeah, the definition is not as narrow as the check that was written. And you know what's really exciting about what Bernie's doing is owning it, like owning that show, you know. And for when we made GFE, we created a company that licenses the show to Stars. You know, we're the copyright holders, and we control all the derivative works. So you know, that I think is the kind of
Own it.
independence you want.
Own it,
Yeah.
if you can. I'm just going to ask everybody because we've got to end this now, for a final word of, you know, just a lesson learned that you want to just pass on to the audience from your work in this space, in this sandbox.
I mean, I guess I would say a lesson learned is just not to judge any situation on its by the cover, because things are changing and you never know. I mean, and as what I was saying, to keep looking inward instead of outward, because the landscape's changing so fast. If you're trying to chase it, it's like chasing the stock market or a slot machine. But if you're looking at what's inside, then eventually you can find a place for it.
I agree. Don't wait for permission.
Oh, that was going to be mine.
All right. So giving back to the indie episodic series on this of the panel, I will say, figure out why you're doing the project you're doing now. And I'll elaborate just real quickly. There are many reasons to do an independent series by yourself. The Leimert Park, a Wain Days, Lizzie, Bennet Diaries, whatever. And they're all different reasons, because you may want to just sell it, or you may want to show your craft as a writer or director, as an actor, or you may want to build an audience for yourself. These goals are not mutually inclusive. They're more likely mutually exclusive, because you can't get all three. It's very rare. Lizzie, Bennet Diaries, for all its success, doesn't have a TV deal. Never has. Never had one. You know, and why not is not a bitter point. We just never chose to do one, because that wasn't the goal. Our goal wasn't trying to upsell the TV. So when you're looking at a project that you're developing, think of the #1 goal. When I asked Stephanie, what's the win? And I really wanted to know the answer, because I just saw the series and like, is she trying to sell to Netflix, as an example, or is she trying to release it and build an audience, is what she said. So the goal wasn't apparent to me when I watched the show, which is totally fine, which is why I asked the question, but it should be apparent to you for your shows.
Yeah. I would just add your voice, what makes you different, your point of view. These are your valuable assets. And also learning craft, I think, is really, really important. And watch stuff. Go out there and watch a lot of stuff, and get inspired, and find some great mentors out there as well. Yeah. All right. I think we did it.
Thanks, Michelle.
Thank you.
Thank you.